mission statement. I introduced myself. And so you came in at an opportune time, at the best time, to be able to transition to the fact that we are truly honored and blessed to have you joining us. And I've been witness to your public speaking and your motivational speaking in Brentwood. And so, I can attest to the fact that, we have a great opportunity to hear your story and to hear some words that you can share with us this evening to allow us to grow and to prosper, right? So thank you.
I think what's I always say a challenge for our communities of color is for us to stop competing with each other to become the first second-class citizen.
Right.
I think we constantly are trying to get to a space where we are respected by the majority, and a lot of us will do it by any means necessary. Even though the collective of us would be stronger, we simply like to step over or on each other to get into the good graces of the majority, so that we could be a rung below them, right? Because the majority will never, because of the racist, white supremacist ideological underpinnings of their conditioning, that we will never be equals to them. So, and we implicitly understand that, therefore we don't mind being under them as long as we're not the lowest of the low.
Right.
That's a lot of, so our mentalities, unfortunately, are such that we can't understand the power and numbers and understand that our journeys are similar. And even with poor whites and how their journeys are aligned with ours, back in the day when there was when people say, well, I wonder when racism took hold, and then racists will tell you, well, they'll try to throw confusion in there as like, we don't really know, like racism just has been this thing in America. And we actually do know historically. We know when race ideology started to be kind of discussed in literature, and we know when racism as a system took hold here in America. It took about 100 years between 1676 and 1776 before racism took root here. For years, predating Nathaniel Bacon's rebellion, whites have attempted to sow a seed of disconnect and distrust among poor whites and Africans who were here, right? It's before all the other so-called immigrants came here. And the poor whites wouldn't accept it. They wouldn't accept it because they understood who was picking their pocket. So they would go to the local areas with poor blacks and, black people who were indentured servants before they became chattel. And they would talk about the wages that they made and talk about how they wanted to own land one day and talk about their plight. And they understood who was picking their pocket. And it took into there was an economic material divide between them that led the foundation for the hatred and the racism that followed. So once you undervalue, then completely devalue indentured servitude, and then you put a whole value behind chattel enslavement and then make that the institution that you're going to get behind. Now the poor whites who were promised the opportunity to grow into a one-day landholder now were pissed. And they were pissed with who? Black folks. Right. So it's like, you are stealing our job. And where have we heard that before?
Right.
They are stealing our jobs. So that mentality has paid dividends for centuries, because now that you have white folks not being able to make a living, and now you have black folks who are chattel slaves and doing the similar job, now you want to blame black people for their own condition, even though that they were being raped, tortured, and murdered. That didn't matter to you because you couldn't feed yourself. So once you have this, it took about 100 years for that to take root. So as America was claiming its independence and espousing the ideals of the Enlightenment, of justice and equality and fraternity and all that other good stuff and fairness, they were also doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on race ideology and cementing it into the fabric of American society. And so as independence came for whites, really wealthy whites against other whites, right? We have wealthy whites in America fighting for their independence against wealthy whites in England. That was really what it was all about. Poor whites got the byproduct of it. As that was being done, they were then taking rights away from Black people and dehumanizing them. And it was a process of dehumanization. So that's where we are in America. And that has paid dividends for years. Because when you look at the root, when you look at the word ism, right, the last part of the word racism, that ism, and anything, it could be feminism, ism denotes system. And we know that racism is a system of race prejudice and race privilege. And so, people who have positions of power and who are the majority maintain the control. And they determine who will be powerful and who will not. So that's where we live. And it's going to be very difficult to change, because now, like Stalinist, Russia, or communist China, or Nazi Germany, we're now burning books, right? When that's a euphemism for, basically not allowing people to study certain histories. So, book burning and removing history from people's grasp used to be a thing that we looked at and said,
recording in progress.
We said, we said, this is disgusting. This is terrible. Who does that in a free society? And now this is exactly happening in our society, and we're more reflective of a fascist society than many other places on the globe. I'll say this last thing. One of the things that's emblematic of how fascism has worked into our society in a very seamless way is making our children stand for the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. Yeah. We're one of the only countries on the planet that says it is February 28th, 2023. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Nobody does that anymore. And you don't have to do it, but you're pressured to do it if you don't know the rules of the law. So it's a lot, that we have that's problematic here in America.
Well, thank you for this opening statement. So before we continue, I wanted to give Adnan, Saeed, and Jahangir an opportunity to say a couple of words on behalf of PACE and the leadership of this team. And then we'd like to transition and getting to know you and a little bit about your background and all of that. So, gentlemen.
All right, I'll go first. My name is Saeed Hassan. I'm the chairman of PACE, and I really appreciate the team. Mark, Adnan is here, Saqib is here, and Rosie is here. I mean, the number of them. And I think the idea was, from the comfort of our home, we can talk on this important topic today and learn from each other. And we really appreciate Dr. Johnson joining us, and also Jahangir Khattak Sahab, and all my friends here. Mr. Mizanur Rahman is here, Lady Combe is here, Adnan is on the phone also. So I wanted to welcome, and I would like to listen today.
Adnan?
Adnan, you're mute.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Yes, well, first of all, thank you, Mark, for taking the time out to take initiative for organizing this event, such an important event. And I'm really honored and excited to be here with Dr. Jonathan. It's really, I heard about you a lot, and I'm sorry, I'm unable to turn on my camera, but one of these days maybe we'll meet you in person. Definitely, it will be an honor, and I'm very excited to be a part of this Black History Month celebration with you and with the other team member and the community member of PACE, and my fellow comrades and activists and organizers from the community. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
If everyone else want to comment quickly, we can then go back into it. Yeah, Mizan, you want to go? You're mute.
Yes, hi. Good evening, gentlemen, and Dr. Aaron and Mr. Mark Soto. It was very nice introduction that you both put. And Saeed bhai, many thanks to you. I'm very beloved on the idea of Black History Month, or in general, overall, all year. to do any program. I attended, in fact, New York City, 3 of them this month on different organizations, including Indian General Consulate this past Saturday. So I was very pleased that last day of February today, in fact, Said Bhai was arranged to do that by the PACE. I was wondering why it was not discussed before, and it just came around that. I appreciate that. And we should celebrate all together. There is no black, white, or brown. We all are human beings. I think it matters that we can understand that. We should not differentiate on the basis of color, race, or where you're coming from. But one thing it is true from South Asian America, our background, and also Asian in general, and many other, sometimes they are not, in my opinion, personal, not very aware or appreciative what Black life and Black community sacrifice for our way of living here. Sometimes we forget that we should tribute our salute and recognition and respect to this community. And that's what I am. So I'm really glad to hear this. In fact, I took off my Zoom call from Lions Club. I told Said Bhai.
Yeah, thank you.
This one.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Okay,
Thank you.
quickly, we'll just move forward. Lady Com, you want to say something?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. It is a pleasure to be in this Zoom meeting with you, all of you. Dr. Jackson, I have the pleasure of seeing you speak on Sunday at the library. It was awesome. Thank you so much. And my name is Lady Combs. I work for EOC of Suffolk. My job is community-based initiative. So I share information about resources and events and anything that's available out there for the community.
Thank you for joining us and having me.
All right. Mark, back to you.
I think Mr. Katak wanted to say something.
I just wanted to appreciate this this event and appreciate PACE. Mark, thank you. Thank you, Zaid Bhai. And thank you everyone who is here. And thank you, Dr. Johnson. It's such a pleasure to listen to your thoughts. These are really very incisive and insightful. And that's what we are generally missing in our lives these days. We are moving on, rarely thinking that we need to look behind as well, because there is a lot that we can learn for our future. So when we have events like these, where we go back into history and then juxtapose it with much that is going around us and find any similarities or any lessons that we have learned from the past and that can be implemented in our today's lives. And that can really make our lives much better. And plus, I think first thing for action is understanding. I mean, you cannot act until you know what exactly you're talking about. So that's why when we talk about Black Lives Matter, or for that matter, civil rights, human rights, basic rights, freedom of expression, association, and all those freedoms that are the fruits of democracy, I think all this comes with a bit of more knowledge that may not be necessarily available everywhere unless you like to read or you are interested in. That's a different story. But other than that, we generally don't have those opportunities. That's why when I joined and I suggested that we should record it, because conversation like these, I think these are rare. And these are very precious. So I won't take any much of your time. I really appreciate PACE, Said Bhai, Adnan Bhai, and Mark, all of you. And thank you again, Dr. Johnson. It's such a pleasure to listen to you. And I'll stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. So, Dr. Johnson, before you get started, being that this is a very moving experience for me to have you sharing with us and talk to us about, important things that you feel that, you should customize your message to us. But so my journey really quickly is I identify as a Black Hispanic who does not appear to be Black, right? And my journey has been where I've been discriminated against Black folks because you're not Black, right? I've been discriminated against my Latino brothers and sisters because I appear to be Anglo and I don't have an accent, or, I don't look Hispanic enough, or what have you. And then, of course, I'm discriminated against the white racist types because I am ethnic enough looking for them, right? And so in my journey, celebrating my African ancestry, my Hispanic and my Taino indigenous blood and all of those things, I found so much passion in just bringing people together. And that's what we try to do in having an
Recording
extraordinary
stopped.
speaker like you. here
Recording
with
in
us this
progress.
evening. So once again, I just want to thank you for what you do, what you represent each and every day. You inspire and you motivate me. Iron sharpens iron. And so I give the floor to you and I say, God bless you and let's do this.
Thank you. And I think what's unfortunate is us who would like to live in a world where we're just, we're judged by the merit, by the hard work, by the, putting our heads down and just working hard for our families. And we just want to do right for our next generation, for our progeny, people coming up behind us. Those of us who want to live outside of the bounds of the constructs of whiteness and white American racism, we unfortunately have to understand that we live in it. No matter how much we want to live outside of it, we are born and we are conditioned in it. So we are one race, the human race. Unfortunately, white people created race as a construct, a man-made construct meant to separate, divide, and establish a social hierarchy. That was what it was for. It had serviceability. There had to be a way for alleged so-called white Christians to justify the rape, torture, murder, theft, and enslavement that they were going to do. You can't call yourself Christian and rape somebody. So that somebody can't be a body. It has to be a thing, all right? An object or an animal, right? Which begs the question, are you into bestiality if you're having intercourse with animals? Like, so it's just a weird kind of, but you can say whatever you need to say to convince yourself and your population that you're doing nothing wrong. Right. I always look, there are a couple of asides that I talk about. Like, there was a whole group of light-skinned Black people that were created in this country due to rape. I have to make people understand a whole population of thousands of Black people who, you come from, when you're kidnapped and coming from Africa and you're looking like me, but then you end up looking very, 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 very fair skinned, like children are very fair skinned. They all were examples of rape and, of the outcome and the result of rape. That's the mentality. That's the sickness that is in the life's blood of American society, in this culture here. So even with our, and there's so much misdirection and misunderstanding. The majority of people who were stolen from Africa were brought to the Central and South America region. So the Dominicans, for an example, 70% of the island, 70% of the half of island that they occupy are Black, and a lot of them will not identify with it because of the internal racism that they obviously embrace, because white supremacist ideology is so strong. Let me just say this before I finish that point. I can almost understand it when somebody has their foot on your throat, and that foot on your throat is connected to the darkness of your skin. And if you can just, if I can get closer to whiteness, and if I could just get a little bit of air, then I can deny my Blackness. So so I can understand that it's so sad that some of them won't even acknowledge their Blackness, and their abuelita looks like me. You look go further enough back at grandmom and granddad and their abuelo, they look like me. But that I'm not Black. I'm Dominican. Because they associate Blackness with the stereotype that comes along with American Blackness. And stereotype not even the fullness of American Blackness, because the fullness of American Blackness is rich culture. The stereotype is what you'll see on television, on the nightly news, and then the media, multimedia complex. So we just have, it's unfortunate that Black people that exist like me, I come from a family of professionals and educators, and my cousin was a retired principal and educated people. That doesn't matter, because when I walk outside at 6'7", 265 pounds in a hoodie and Timberlands, I'm a thug, I'm a nigger. And that's how I look, that's how and I played sports. Now, clearly I did play basketball, but that was a segment of my life. I'm an intellectual, and so what happens is when people who don't know me immediately connect with me through sports, I almost become super academic, and I do that on purpose. Like, don't bro me if you don't know me. You know, like, don't get so comfortable that you're talking to me with a relaxed vernacular that's not even a part of your vernacular.
Right.
But you want to identify with me because you're uncomfortable, and you're so uncomfortable you want to figure out how you can connect to me without just being normal. Because I always say, especially with white folks, they are raised in a construct and a context that they don't have to know who we are. They literally can be especially on Long Island, they could be raised in areas where they have no connection to or intimate relations with Black people whatsoever, and they only know Black people by what they see on television. And that has reigned true my whole life. I had a student teacher years ago who was from Massapequa. Now remember, Amityville is right next door. And he was my student teacher. He said, I have to tell you something. He said, you are the first Black person that I've ever had a real conversation with in my entire life. And I'm like, and you're from Massapequa and Amityville's right next door. And so it was an eye-opening moment for him. He said, I didn't know what to expect. He said, but you are actually one of the brightest people that I've ever met in my life. And so it was just a kind of a watershed moment for him, that all of what he learned, even though his parents were good and taught him to, judge people based upon how they treat you and all that other good stuff, but all of what he's been seeing in his whole life and conditioned to understand about Blackness has been wrong for the most part. And so we're on this journey of trying to, and it's sad that Black people still have to audition our humanity to be accepted. I want you to think about that. Black people were raped, tortured, murdered, stolen from, and enslaved in this country. And we didn't go crazy and slit white people's throats once we had an opportunity. So the idea that we're these barbarians is simply projection of a people who acted barbarically and heinously and animalistically. So all of the stereotypes that befall Black people that of a violent nature is like, you really got to ask, well, who created these stereotypes, and how can you be a descendant of a person who literally raped, tortured, murdered, stole, and enslaved their position and themselves into the top position? The great Toni Morrison once said, if you can only be tall if somebody is on their knees, then you have a serious problem. And that's what we're dealing with in America. And right now we're in a wholesale fight for things to normalize, for racism to be normalized once again without it being called out. And now that it's being called out, they bastardize the calling out by calling it wokeism or woke rhetoric or whatever have you. So anything to distract away from the real problem that is American racism. American racism, unfortunately, is so powerful that it spreads to everyone else. So the very people that come to this country based on the sacrifices of Black people, instead of saying thank you to Black people and understanding that sacrifice was so important for them to come here, they adapt to what's already here and adopt the racism that befalls us. So that comes after us. So then all of the stereotypes become easily embraced, and thus Black people are always in the fight by ourselves. It's almost seemingly like we have no friends. So that's where we are. My journey starts in foster care. I was an orphan, an ward of New York State in the 1980s. And luckily I was, with a woman, Earlene Johnson, who ended up adopting me and kind of like led me into my journey of history, of understanding the rhetoric versus the reality, right? The rhetoric of American justice, equality, and liberty versus our reality, our lived experiences. So that's what led me into history and understanding really where I live and who I live amongst. I always say it, and I'll say this again before I pause and let anyone ask a question or come in. We live in the society that the society wants us to live in. If the majority here if they really wanted equity would exist in this democratic republic, because we're not a true democracy, we're a republic, right? So However, if the ideology across the board was one of equity, then Black people would have gotten reparations already, and we would already have equity here. Unfortunately, they don't, because they see equity as a loss of privilege for them, and they don't want to lose that, because that means fairness, and you have to now compete, really, and your skin privilege wouldn't give you the leg up.
And it goes back to exactly where you started, which was essentially, you know, the crab mentality of pulling each other down, regardless of which group we may be identifying with, and allowing, you know, the institutionalized racism and the inequities and everything to just perpetuate and continue to exist without any struggle and without any recognition and without any deviation even from allowing what is currently the status quo to change even slightly. So thank you. And so I'd like to open up the mic.
Well, let me say this before you open it up. Can you blame people though? See, I have to always go back to empathy. As much as as a younger man who was a little bit more aggressive when I was younger, I couldn't stand everybody. Like, you know, you want to fire everybody. Like, no. Like, but now you have to understand, you put people in terrible conditions.
Right.
And it's like, just like I think they had like this mouse experiment where you have like a family of mice, and then, you know, and give them all the resources that they need, and then slowly start taking them away. The father, the biggest mouse, turned on everybody, killed the kids, killed the wife for resources. So it's like human behavior. When you put people in such an economic quagmire,
Right.
and then you then give them no resources to get out of it, and then you leave them to their vices while you continue to remove resources, sociologically, they're going to turn on each other. Right. So I can't have empathy for you when I can't feed my family. F you. Correct. I'm going to do what I got to do.
And then the lack of interaction that you spoke about, right? So for instance, I live in Merrick. My daughter is Dominican and Puerto Rican, and she's never been taught by a Black teacher. Nowhere.
Exactly. Yep.
And she's never been taught by a Hispanic teacher. Nowhere. And even worse, the white students that are there have not been influenced or taught by a person of color, right? So yes, absolutely. I'm sorry.
And then the newspaper, there was a newspaper expose a few years back, I think it was 2016, where Hofstra came out with a study about the lack of teachers of color, specifically Black teachers, specifically Black men, in the classroom. And then they were talking about all of the data that suggests that one black male in a classroom leads to less discipline problems, higher graduation rates, kids of color especially going to college and higher education at a larger rate. White students and other students of color really benefit as well statistically from having that person in the room. And so it's not just the Black kids that will benefit or the children of color, it's white kids as well. But again, racism hurts white people as well. They just are willing to sustain that hurt, whatever hurt, because they maintain this white skin privilege. Yes, and then they equate and see, they also establish a narrative to where it's hard to argue with them if you don't know the facts. So whenever you say the word privilege, I didn't have any privilege, I grew up poor. Well, no, privilege doesn't necessarily have to connect to money, monetary gain, or whatever. It has everything to do with opportunity, however. So, you know, that's what it is. This country does an excellent job speaking out of both sides of its mouth. Think about a few years ago. Remember when Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were running again? Hillary Clinton and Obama, you know, were kind of duking it out. And that phraseology, the forgotten man in the Midwest. Remember the forgotten man. In other words, that was white folks who didn't want to economically retool, or they didn't want to go back to college, but they wanted the cold jobs and the old jobs of yesteryear. And I'm like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You cannot say you're leaving us behind and we're the forgotten man of the Midwest, and then in the same breath said, but we practice rugged individualism and pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and then in the same breath say, bring back our jobs. Which one is it? Bring back our jobs or rugged individualism and pull yourself up by your bootstraps? The bootstraps fallacy. So it's like you talking out of both sides of your mouth. The government, and that's just a microcosm of what how whiteness represents itself or presents itself in American society. You have to give me what it is I demand, and then I'm going to tell you I worked hard for it.
Right.
That's where we live. And then, but because it has been burned in our skulls, rugged individualism, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We believe that these folks are in these positions because they worked hard for them. And instead of us questioning the bootstraps fallacy and us questioning how you got there, we turn to each other and fight each other because we want to get there.
Yes,
All
sir.
we see is the end result. We don't see how you got there. And so we fight each other for the scraps left over. So that's where we are.
Indeed. Okay, so I know that there were a couple of people that wanted to perhaps pose a question or make a statement based upon what's been said already. So we'll open up the floor at this point.
Well, Black History Month is problematic. It started off as Negro History Week in 1926 with Dr. Carter G. Woodson. Dr. Carter G. Woodson believed Negro History Week was important because when he was growing up, and by the way, he's the second PhD, Black PhD, to come out of Harvard after Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. And he thought that it was necessary to have Negro History Week because in his history books, he saw that there were no references of Blackness in them. And he questioned them. And he was once told that Black people don't offer anything to society, have offered nothing to American culture. He knew it was wrong. So he advocated, it became his life's work. And he was that historian who basically made it his life's work to investigate and study Black history and bring it to the forefront and have a real celebration. And it's in February because Negro History Week took place in a week that celebrated two American heroes for Black people. Frederick Douglass, whose birthday was February 14th, and Abraham Lincoln, whose birthday was February 12th. And Abraham Lincoln, although he was a racist, and really didn't free enslaved people. He only freed enslaved people in rebelling cities and states during the Civil War. He was still considered among Black people the great emancipator. And so those two individuals were championed. And that's when we celebrated in that week, the week where their birthdays are on. And then it expanded in 1976 to Black History Month. But I'm thinking from 1976, that's the year my brother was born, till now, we have done nothing. It's been almost 50 years and we haven't expanded it. You know, we should have already had curriculum written so that it could be infused into every curricula across the school, but we haven't. So when we ask about the significance of Black history is American history. Black people built this country. I mean, we just have to say what it is, call a thing a thing. Black people were draining swamps to create plantations, deforesting, cutting down trees, draining swamps, and creating plantations that they were going to then work on. Plantation labor and slave labor occupied almost 70% of the revenue that America, gross domestic product that America was bringing in at one point. When cotton became king, they called it white gold. Right. It was generating in today's dollars billions upon billions. We don't even have to talk about slavery to talk about what's owed to Black people, but I like to go there and talk about the money aspect. Little Haiti alone, before their revolution, they were generating hundreds of millions of dollars for France. Hundreds of millions of dollars. So that little half of an island. So the problem in this country is that you guys, and when I say you guys, anybody who is in the American education system who comes here, you're not afforded the real discussion about the significance of Black presence here and Black people being here before Columbus and being here before the Europeans. They don't want to discuss that either. Mm-hmm. There's a great book, Africans and the Discovery of America, written by a Harvard scholar, I believe in the 1920s, I want to say. And there's another book, They Came Before Columbus, by Dr. Ivan von Satima, about Black presence in American society before Europeans. The things that Black people have done historically routinely get ignored so that it could perpetuate the narrative that Black people were just these animals waiting to be civilized and brought over from Africa here. Black people were already here. Think about it. If Black people are indigenous everywhere, I want you to think about it. Black people actually settled China first. Black people settled Southeast Asia first. Black people settled Australia first. Think about some of the early Indians in India. And I'm talking about like the Dalit and the so-called untouchable. And even before that, you could talk about how the darker skinned ones, I mean, the ones that are darker than I am, they have different other phenotypes, like the hair, but you have ones that whose the melanin is as rich as mine or darker. Black people, these are African people. Black people settled Australia first. If Africans could get to Australia, why do we think the Africans couldn't get to Brazil? South America, Central America? Like, it's weird. Black people settled Northern European countries first. The Cheddar Man, as they call him, one of the earliest inhabitants of Northern, I think one of the Scandinavian countries, or even England, London, England. Dark phenotype like mine, but blue eyes and other. Black people have the different phenotypes for every single group on the face of the planet. Black women have a gene they nickname it the Eve gene because she could give birth to everyone on the planet in terms of the genetic what Black people are made of. It's just when you go deep into who Black people are, who created the pyramids, right? What dynasty was that created in? Not the Arabs that are there now or the Europeans that moved in, but the Black folks who had a working relationship and a warring relationship with the Nubians to the south and Upper Egypt, as they used to call it, where modern day, I guess you call it modern day Nubia, I guess where Sudan would be or near. So when we talk about the real history of where Black people are and were, the significance is profound. And the deeper you dig, the more Black folks you'll find. And then that's when, you're like, wow, the oldest bones found from over here in North America. And it was of a Black girl. So again, why are pyramids everywhere? We have pyramids in Texas, or I should say, and it's not Texas, the southern part of, I want to say, what is that? Is that Mississippi? We have a lot of different things that are here and that that connect to Black culture. What about the European explorers who were writing in their diaries of coming across communities that are very, very eerily similar to that of Mali in West Africa? Like, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about the early European so-called explorers who become the European rape, torture, murderers, and the conquistadors, talking about the people that were here. They specifically referenced the red man, of course, but they also talked about the Negro. And they talked about the Negro, like specifically referencing Black people. This is before the slave trade became a thing. So if we talk about the significance of Black sailors and the significance of Black presence in the diaspora across the world, we talk about intelligent people who were enslaved and then their histories are erased and then cut off from the scientific revolution and then completely dismantled in the minds of folks who they actually civilized, right? If we're talking about the Moors who civilized Spain and Portugal. So it goes deep. It just requires us to go a little deeper than what the schools give us, but sometimes we need a roadmap. So it's important for us, once we start understanding the significance of Black people, we start to empathize and understand, wow, these are not animals. These are not people who don't take care of their family or they don't take care of their women and all the stereotypes that we see out there on television. Those are not them. The majority of them are like Dr. Aaron Johnson, but I don't get a chance to see them. I get a chance to see the nonsense daily. And then the question should be, I wonder why that is.
Yeah.
And 1 second, my phone, I got to turn off my screen because I got to talk to my son right quick. I'm here, I'm listening, I'm engaged, but he has a question for me.
Okay, well, in that moment, we have another opportunity. He is listening, so who would like to offer the next question or make the next comment?
We have last 7 minutes left.
Yeah, I have Jahangir Khattak Saab left a question in comment section. If you don't mind, Mark, can I read it? And
Yes,
will try
please,
to ask a quick follow-up question if I can put my thoughts together with your
please
permission.
do. Absolutely.
All right, so I will just read the comment left by Jahangir Khattak before he left. He left a comment for Dr. Johnson. My apologies for leaving early, but I have to pick my family. Excellent conversation. I will watch it later, but let me leave question for Dr. Johnson. And this is his question. This country elected a Black president and has witnessed some progress, but racism still remains one of the biggest challenges. Do you think we have made any progress? Question mark. Also, do you think we will never see race equity and inclusion in this country? Question mark. Thank you.
I think us having a Black president is an illusion, and it's symbolic. It's symbolism. Representation, it matters. It was great for my children to see a Black president, but he was never able to behave in a way that really centered his Blackness. So him being the president of the United States was awesome for representation purposes, but his legislation never really ever centered Blackness. So I want you to I want folks to understand that. And do I think there'd be racial equity one day? I think one day. I can't never say never. I just know that racists are powerful. Racists have endurance. I have to say it like that. If you ever argue with the racists, you know how much endurance that they have, because they've been conditioned in this craziness, this crucible of crazy. And because they have been conditioned in it, they have every excuse and obnoxious retort available to them. And if you don't know the facts, it's hard for you to really, really drill down into them and prove them wrong. So racial equity is a possibility, but it requires certain people to give up their privilege, not give up anything of material value, but their privilege, and that's something that they don't want. Remember, a white high school graduate will get a job before a Black college graduate, statistically, in America. So in a country that says you work hard and you go to school, you'll get a good job and all that other good stuff. So the whole rugged individualism goes, again, right out the window. Black women are the highest degreed gender in America, but they probably are the lowest paid. You see the contradiction. So could we have racial equity one day? I think so, but it's going to require a lot. And America has to be honest with itself. And one thing I know about America, it's never been honest with itself. We constantly lie about who we are. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. You did. Mark, here's my quick thoughts, if you allow me to share with Dr. Johnson. So Dr. Johnson, this is Syed again. Thanks again for sharing all the information. Right.
Adnan, we have last 3 minutes for this session.
Yes. So my quick thoughts. So when the history and is already really manipulated in this country. When our ancestors they were brought from Africa to America, their identity, religious identity, and were stripped out of their real from their personality. I mean, they were Muslims, who have contributed to build this country. Really, they work hard. Even writing a constitution, they have taken part in that process. What can we do as a Muslim American of minority community to recognize their efforts? I mean,
I think we have like we have to we have to express the fullness of who we are, and we have to. But think about the people who are teaching our children. They can barely teach Dr. King with fidelity. You think they're going to be able to talk about the Moors or the Muslims or anybody who has significant contributions to this country when they barely know Dr. King? They teach I Have a Dream, Dr. King. They don't teach I Fear I Have Integrated My People into a Burning House, Dr. King. They teach 1963 Dr. King. They don't teach 1968 Dr. King. So it requires our people to be learned. And a lot of people are lazy. A lot of our teachers are getting paid. And they're not like, as a history teacher, I was invested in learning and growing historically. My knowledge base. I don't know if all of them are.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, we have last 2 minutes. If you can wrap it up, please. We would love to talk the whole night. I mean, it was such a lovely subject where we're learning so much from the presence of Dr. Johnson. And of course, Mark spoke also on the topic. And we would really, if we can talk for hours and learn from it. But I guess we will be doing more of these sessions in future. And all the participants, we will send you the message out and would like to speak in the comfort of our home on topics that will be very interesting in future.
To not finish the evening, I wanted to give Dr. Johnson the last words. I'm just going to say thank you. You continue to inspire, and you are appreciated, and I am proud of you.
I really appreciate any opportunity that I can get a chance to really connect with people, because I like just sharing truth. A lot of times facts get people in their feelings, and it's been obvious. You know, we can see what's going on across the country, and because people have been conditioned to really they've been conditioned that their feelings mean more than the facts. Their fragility means more than the facts. And so I love being able to get with people who just want to grow. And I just think that we all should, when the way we lead our lives, it should be with empathy and grace. And a lot of times discarding the stereotype is hard. Think about what happened after 9/11, how people treated Muslim people. It was disgusting, but it made them feel real good about themselves to treat Muslim people that way. And so it took and I remember certain communities of color kind of wrapping their arms around Muslim people in that era of time, because it's like you're getting a little bit of what we get every day. So we kind of want to wrap our arms around you, and Americans are easily persuaded to look at somebody else as the other, and then other them in a way that they can dehumanize them. And I say, if we can live our life with empathy and grace, try to feel with people and not feel for them. I don't need your sympathy. You don't feel for me. Feel with me. Get in my shoes so we can kind of work this out together. I think we'll be better off. And that's all I would like leave us with. Arm ourselves with education. Our education will lead to empathy. Our empathy will lead to change and action.
Thank you.